Hello again. It's been a while. I know. What else is new? Clearly, I gotta get my shit together. No excuses, no explanations, no nothing. It just is what it is. Gonna pick up where I left off. 6 months ago. The last upload was January 28th of this year. And Lord, has it been a while. A lot has happened since then. As you guys know, I own reptiles. And I've only been owning reptiles for a couple of years. I'm fairly new, which is why I kind of wanted to start this new journey on YouTube, kind of guiding newcomers to the community on how to properly take care of their reptiles. Because people like me don't know shit, or let me correct myself, didn't know shit prior to owning them. All that to say, my biggest fear has always been losing my snakes. Let's go back to February. If you've watched my previous video on my animals, you know that I own a Kenyan sand boa. My Kenyan sand boa, Mr. Kiyoki, is really tiny. Like, let me show you. This is Mr. Kiyoki, and literally, probably the size of my arm. Do you see his little head? So this is the story of how I lost my snake and how I got him back. On a Friday night, I had fed Mr. Kiyoki. Mr. Kiyoki also lives in a bin. Keep that in mind. I remember it was the weekend that my uncle was leaving for Florida, so we went out, and it was just a crazy Friday. And long story short, after feeding Mr. Kiyoki, which was very out of the ordinary for me, I left the lid on, did not lock the bin, and from my view, I couldn't tell that the bin was unlocked. This is the view that I get from my perspective once the bin is pushed all the way in. That's the reason why I couldn't tell right away that Mr. Kiyoki was missing. And he's an underground snake, so mind you, it's not out of the ordinary to go a couple of days without seeing Mr. Kiyoki. It wasn't until Tuesday that I did my normal check-ins, and I pull Mr. Kiyoki's bin out, and I noticed that the bin was unlocked. And at this point, my heart drops, my stomach is in shambles. I start to panic, and then I start digging through the aspen. So clearly, I start to panic, and as I'm digging and not finding Mr. Kiyoki, the reality starts to sink in that he's no longer in this tank. By the way, I'm sorry I keep saying tank and bin. I keep switching between both, but you know what I mean. After going through the whole tank and not finding Mr. Kiyoki, I start to panic and tear my entire room apart. Where would he go? I was losing my mind looking for this damn snake, but he was nowhere to be found. So there were two theories that I was certain could have happened. Either one, he went to the basement through the radiator. There was a tiny little hole, which seemed impossible for him to get through. Or two, he was somewhere in the house, outside of my room somewhere, and I would just have to find them. So the rest of the week I spent tearing the house apart. I made holes in the wall. My poor parents had to deal with me having a complete mental breakdown. I couldn't sleep. My nights were restless because at the end of the day, it was my mistake. And now this poor little snake, who is my responsibility, who is my child, who I love so much, who I would die for, is missing because of my mistake. I don't know, man. It was definitely a very hard time. And most people don't have empathy for when you lose a snake. You know, you tell someone that you lost a dog or a cat, people understand and they have empathy for you and they feel sorry, or they'll, you know, there's a certain type of relatability when it comes to losing a dog as opposed to losing a snake. By the way, I am very grateful for my family because the very moment that I realized that Mr. Kiyoki was missing, they all dropped what they were doing and helped me look for him. Every day after work, I was going downstairs in the basement. Mind you, my basement is unfinished, so there are all types of theories going on in my head that maybe he got outside and froze to death. Because by the way, it's February in New York. It was fucking cold. I was afraid that he might have froze to death out somewhere in the basement. A couple of weeks had gone by, and every day I'm looking in the basement. Every day I felt like a crazy person, because any movement I'd see, I'd be like, is that him? Is that him? It wasn't until like a month in where I really started to lose hope. I started to accept the idea that maybe I'm never gonna get Mr. Kiyoki back. Maybe he had died somewhere. But really it was the unknown that was killing me the most. After a month of looking and searching throughout the house, all I really wanted was an answer, even if that meant that he was dead. There was this one nightmare I had where it was literally the scene of Toy Story. You know, the last scene where everyone cries and they're in the garbage, that garbage trail thing, and they're about to burn. Like, yeah, picture Mr. Kiyoki in that setting. That was my dream. I woke up fucking crying. There was one thing that did give me the tiniest bit of hope, and that was when I watched Snake Discovery's video on what happens or what to do when you lose a snake.
A wise reptile keeper once told me that there are two types of snake owners out there. Those who have lost a snake at some point or another, and liars. Because honestly, everyone loses a snake at some point. It's just a matter of time until it happens to you. So today I'm going to be sharing with you some techniques to find and retrieve your pet snake if it happens to go missing.
Now, there was one thing that really stuck to me that I only learned to appreciate after I found Mr. Kiyoki, and that was this right here.
Other than that though, you just have to play the waiting game, but most snakes will be found within the first week after they have escaped. And don't lose hope if you haven't found them after that first week. I had a snake that was gone for 6 months, and then I found her randomly in my house. You usually find snakes when you least expect it and when you're not actually actively searching for them anyway.
She went 6 months without finding a snake. For the first month, that was good enough. That was enough reassurance to give me the slightest bit of hope. By the second month, I had lost complete hope. I was just depressed, sad, and had accepted that Mr. Kiyoki either died already or will die a suffering long death of starvation or of cold or whatever it was. I found him 2 months later. 2 months later. In the basement. Now I'll tell you how. I was in the bathroom and I hear my brother screaming my name, but I was in the bathroom, so of course I didn't answer. I was busy using the bathroom. But after him screaming my name a couple times and having no response, he screams out loud,
"Jesse, I found Mr. Kiyoki."
Immediately, I didn't even wipe my ass. I got up, I fucking ran down the stairs, and there he was. It was like the ghost from Christmas Past. A huge burst of happy tears just comes running down my face. I could not believe this snake went 2 months during cold snaps, by the way, went through shed. He had some stuck shed on him and still was perfectly healthy. He was fine. It was just like another day in his life, but it was most definitely not like another day in mine. I was ecstatic and in disbelief that this snake was in my hands again. And let me tell you something, it was one of the biggest learning lessons of my life. So here is what really happened. I accidentally left the bin unlocked after feeding him, and he had made his way underneath a radiator where there was this tiny little hole that I had serious doubt that he could fit in. If you don't think they can fit, they can definitely fit. That's a lesson I learned for sure. And the reason why I know he squeezed through there, because one, it's the only way to get to the basement from my room, but two, he had, which you can kind of still see right now. Let's see if you can see it. I don't know if you can see that, but he has a tiny little scar left. That little scar he got from squeezing through that little hole, but during his hiatus, he went through shed, so by the time I found him, it was already scarred and healing. And it just so happened to be luck and timing, and through miracle, I recovered my snake. Really, the reason why I wanted to make this video was if it wasn't for Snake Discovery's video, I wouldn't have had any hope at all. And I'm pretty sure there are so many new keepers out there that freak out and have the same experience, and I just felt it was important to talk about it because one, it is why I went missing and stopped making content, but two, if it wasn't for Snake Discovery, I would have never had hope. So maybe this video will be someone else's hope or guidance if you lose a snake. Having videos out there sharing these experiences and just tips and tricks on how to find these snakes again is super important. And I don't think it's talked about often, because that would mean having to admit that you as the owner can make mistakes too. Most people don't like to show their mistakes. They just want to show the good parts about owning animals, but this is the reality also that comes with owning these animals. Mistakes happen, and you know, I got lucky. Look at this guy. Such a cutie. But I will link Snake Discovery's video down below, because if it wasn't for them, I don't know where I would have been mentally. So thank you, Snake Discovery, for giving this newbie reptile keeper some type of hope, some type of guidance. And hopefully this video helps out someone out there who's going through the same thing that I went through. But we're gonna keep it all positive here, because this story has a happy ending, and I am very blessed. If you have a similar story, or maybe a story in general where you lost one of your reptiles, one of your pets, write it down below. You know, make this a comment section where people could share their stories, and you know, we can all learn from each other and learn from each other's mistakes. This community can get very toxic sometimes, and you know, just being open and honest about our mistakes can prevent other people from making those same mistakes. Anyways, thank you so much for listening to my story. I hope you took something away from it. Like the video so that it can show up on the algorithm. People can see the story, and I'll see you real soon with a new video. Later!
Guys, I totally forgot to say, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Okay, I love you, and here's Mr. Kiyoki going back in a safe place. Bye!